All right. Thanks, guys, for tuning in to The Real Deal with Keith Trent. I am joined today by the lovely and very talented Edwina Findley, star of the new film Free Indeed. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, Edwina. First off, I just want to ask you, how did you become involved with this project?
Well, you know, it's interesting. I actually, believe it or not, I was on a call. I was on a prayer call, and it was with all these different leaders in the city of Los Angeles. And there was a prophet on the phone, and the prophet called me by name. And there were like, I don't know, there could have been 100 people on that call. But he called me by name, and he said, you're about to receive an offer for a movie. And he began to describe it and what it was, you know, going to do and all these things that were going to happen after that in conjunction with it. And literally within days, my agent called me and said, we have an offer for you for this film. And they started describing it. I'm like, whoa, what? And so I think that the filmmaker knew of me from The Wire and from Middle of Nowhere. And initially, the lead role was the actor that plays Abe. Initially was going to be played by one of the other actors from The Wire. And so they wanted to put us together, and then it ended up shifting. And, you know, I read the script, and it was obviously extremely compelling. It was very, you know, it was difficult, right? It's an intense story. And then I just started doing a lot of research on the true story upon which it's based. And I realized that, wow, you know, this is a true story, and if I'm going to come into this project, I really have to give it everything I can in order to honor these people and what they went through.
Yeah, so that's actually one of the other questions I want to ask you. How much did you guys actually get to meet, like, the actual people who you guys are portraying, you and David? Did you get to meet them, or did you just read about them?
So we didn't get to meet them. Actually, the filmmaker had done a documentary on the whole story first. So we watched the documentary. I watched a lot of interviews, you know, and read a lot of news reports with regards to the actual story. And because the filmmaker already had so much one-on-one footage because of the documentary that he first did before making it into a scripted film, I felt like I was able to really piece together, you know, what happened in a really dynamic way. The interesting thing, though, is that the one person that no one was able to contact, even for the documentary and seemingly for the news stories, was the mother, and which is who I played. And so I had all these different sides of the story and even the court case and everything, but I could not find her. And so I sort of used that as my impetus too, because I felt like the reason why I could not find her is because she didn't want to be found.
Right.
And so the fact that I could not find her, the fact that no one seemed to be connected with her, and the fact that even in the you know, in the news reports, she's mentioned so briefly, even though obviously the tragedy is biggest for her. I felt like that in itself was a window into her story.
Right. And I definitely think, having seen it now, I would hope that somehow it would make its way to her, that she could see it, because I feel like you guys did an amazing job of really showing her story from a non-judgmental point of view, and just showing the just heartbreaking humanity of dealing with that situation. Because I know when I look at like the concept of mental illness with a child, that's always something that like I have always been afraid of, like as a potential parent, that, you know, everybody's always scared that when you have a kid that something can go wrong. And it's so important to really see like what these people go through when having to deal with that situation, because he did such a great job of displaying like how much love this woman had for her child, but just like her helplessness in actually being able to do anything about it, you know, and then just turning to that last place that she could, which was the church. And that leads me into my next question. I wanted to ask you, I know that I had read in some interviews that David Harewood himself is not an actual Christian, though he does have other influences, like I think he said his mother or grandmother, who is, you know, very religious. But being a Christian yourself, how did that affect your relationship with the work, especially in the very intense church scenes?
Yeah, I mean, it really did. You know, it's kind of funny because David and I sort of switched roles as far as, you know, who we kind of are in our regular lives, right? He's playing this minister, and I'm playing this woman who was, you know, pretty far from faith before encountering him. And so David and I had an opportunity to really have some really deep conversations, because I could identify a lot with his character, you know, and in some places where he had questions, you know, I was able to just share with him on a deeper level, you know, as a Christian, what some of those things really mean, you know, and signify. But then also as a Christian, when I was preparing, like, for some of the church scenes and whatever, you know, obviously I'm preparing from the perspective of a person who's very, very new to that world, right, as far as my character. But what was fascinating was that as we were filming certain scenes, the spirit just came in these really dynamic ways. Like, there were times in the middle of us filming where it was like they had to stop filming. Like, all of a sudden, people started crying and you know, just like getting hot and screaming, and you know, these things were happening, and they were even happening to the crew and people behind the scenes, you know, and people that I don't think would consider themselves believers, but everyone felt something, you know.
Yeah, definitely. I think I read in an interview somewhere where the director, Jake, was talking about how the churchgoers in the film weren't really like actors per se, but they were actually churchgoers, and how one of the women had said to him that, you know, that they were filming, that was his mindset, but in their mindset, they're just going to church. And I feel like you can definitely feel the authenticity of the praise and worship dynamic of it come across on film.
And even the testimonies, because actually pretty much all the testimonies of people being healed or, you know, being delivered from this or that were their true stories.
Oh, wow.
That we captured on film. Yeah. So that really added, you know, to the authenticity as well. So those tears and crying, you know, maybe outside of my character and David's character, which we were, us and also the boy, Ray Jay, my son, we were the main trained actors. And so there were a few other characters that were actors, and then many of them, you know, were actual people from Memphis that agreed to be a part of the project and who were absolutely sharing their own stories and were absolutely having a very authentic experience. Wow.
Yeah, I think that definitely helped with the authenticity of the feel. What was it like being in the dynamic of a very praise and worship driven kind of church? Because I know in the churches that, you know, that we've come up into together, being, you know, CCC and One Church and stuff like that, it's a very different dynamic than the one that you guys were in, which is more like Baptist, where people like laying hands and people are falling out in the aisles and, you know, running around and all that stuff.
Well, Baptists would take an exception to that statement. They would say that's more Pentecostal.
Oh, wait, Pentecostal.
But, no, to answer your question, what you probably didn't know about me is that prior to ever coming to CCC, I was in a Pentecostal church in D.C. Yeah, so that part of it as far as speaking in tongues or laying on of hands, those types of things I was used to based upon the experiences that I had at my church. I'll say during my teen years, I was a part of a church that sort of manifested that way. So it wasn't very strange for me.
Okay, excellent. Now, you brought up Ray Jay, Chandler, who was playing your son, Benny. I also want to talk about Helen Bowman, who played Isabel, your daughter.
Yeah. No. Isabel was the church woman that invited me to the church.
Oh, I'm sorry. What was
Zoey? Zoey is the name of the actress that played my daughter.
Zoey. Okay. Excellent. And she, so with working with Zoey and Ray Jay, what was like your dynamic, like off stage and like preparing for these like really intense scenes that you guys want to have together? Because they're very, very young, and
yeah,
I would assume that the amount of experience they have thus far is probably not that much, and to jump into such a like really intense environment, what was that like? That process with them?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it helped that I absolutely love both of them. You know, when I met them, I just thought they were such great kids, and you know, they're just really great to be around. And so, as an actor, you know, you have such a short period of time to create relationships and connections, and so you have to use everything you have in a very short period of time. You may just have a day, right, to maybe have dinner with somebody or bring them over your hotel room or whatever, right, to actually try and get to know this person that you're going to be working with in such an intimate way. And so, I really connected with the kids as people. And then when it came to acting in our scenes and all of that, one thing I really loved about Ray Jay, who played Benny, was that when when it was time for action, he was so extremely invested. I mean, he just could transform on a dime, to the point where many people who've seen the movie wonder, is he actually autistic, or is he actually disabled? Like, absolutely not. You know, and they're just fascinated because in between takes, I mean, he was laughing and joking, and his personality was just so bubbly and fun and funny. And then all of a sudden, you know, he would just break into these seizures and very, you know, violent acts and tears, you know. And so sometimes his natural personality was a little bit challenging for me, you know, because I'm trying to prepare myself for such a heavy, you know, with such a heavy scene that's coming up, and he's like, you know, what did it talk about? Whatever, comic books or something. So, you know, so we had a couple talks, you know, on the side, like, okay, just so you know, if I'm not laughing back, it's not that I don't think you're funny. It's because I really have to prepare for what we're about to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's always amazing when you have, like, kids that can do that, because I think that a lot of times people think that, like, when actors do, like, really intense work that they're just like that all the time. Some people are very method, where it's just like the whole time. Like, if they play like a villain and you guys like mortal enemies, the whole time you're filming, they won't say anything to you, and they're like very kind of like standoffish with you. And then later, then it's like, oh, everything is cool. But during the process, they're just like, can't do it.
And I am like that.
Yeah, snapping out of it.
Yeah, behind the scenes, sometimes I really have to tell, like, the makeup artists or the costume designers, they might be like, what's wrong? You know, like, Edwina's not talking to us today. I'm like, I'm really sorry, guys. But then it's like it's hard to articulate that in the moment, that here's the reason why I'm being reserved, or here's the reason why I'm, you know, being standoffish. But it's like, you guys can keep laughing and joking, and then I have to, like, break down into, you know, the most, like, the deepest well of tears in the next 5 minutes. So I can't really talk about what's on Instagram right now,
Exactly.
So it's like I definitely have to kind of withdraw, into that really intimate place with myself in order to prepare for scenes like that.
Mm-hmm. With Isabel as well, like when in watching her, or sorry, Zoe, in watching Zoe and Ray Jay work with each other, what was that dynamic like? Like when you guys were doing like the 3 scenes together? Because I know her character seemed to be the only one that could really that he never really was uncalm against. I mean, not that he didn't act certain ways around her, except for like that one moment that I don't want to give too much away. But what was the dynamic like between like the two of them, like watching how they interact? Because they seem to have a very she had such a loving relationship with him. And dealing with like seeing all this stuff happening around her, like even like the small things that people might miss, like when she's in the class and they're like, everybody's like, are you happy? If you're happy and do this, do that.
Yeah.
She's not doing any of it.
Yeah.
And that moment when she's
I
like praying for him, oh my God, Brooke.
Yeah, Zoe is she's very observant. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one thing that's beautiful about the character that she plays, because most of the time you don't see the character or you don't hear the character talking very much. You just see her react to things, or you watch her watch other people. And through her watching other people or through her watching other circumstances, you then have this other lens and other point of view into this world through the eyes of a child. And I thought that her natural curiosity and wonder were just so great as it related to this project. The funny thing is that when Zoe starts to talk, she goes for it. I mean, that girl has so much personality and so much energy and so much life and sass and just everything. She's hilarious. But I think that the part of her that just really ended up being required in this movie and that she did a wonderful job of was her stillness and with her simplicity. And, and so I feel like she did the same thing when it came to the relationship with Ray Jay, her brother. She played around with him, she ran around and was tickled and all of that. And then she also just, kind of watched as he would be in his tormented episodes, and that's really heartbreaking too, just seeing through the eyes of such a young child.
Yeah. Yeah, for kids, the way that they mastered something that is so difficult for even grown actors to get is like the mastered stillness the way they did. I was in awe, surely.
Yeah, totally.
So let me ask you a little about working with Jake as a director. Were there any things in specific, any ways that he went about helping you guys bring out these really emotional scenes? I've worked with different directors over the years, and they have like different things that they use sometimes, or what's the best word? Like exercises sometimes when you're trying to get into a certain thing and they're looking for something, but you're given something good, but it's not exactly what they're trying to get, and they use like a different process to like get you to it. Were there any things in particular that he did to help you guys reach some of the deeper, harder levels to reach when you're going in the very like emotionally intense scenes?
Yeah, I think he was more hands-on with the kids. I think he was more hands-on with the children as far as shaping their performances. With us, I do know with David, he and David had some really long conversations too, as far as like just really finding Abe, what motivates Abe, what makes him tick, going to these other places, like why does Abe feel the way that he does, and just really going there. And really that character, Abe, ended up morphing. So what was on the page initially as far as how he was described, and even some of the scenes, quite a few of the scenes that were written in the original draft, ended up completely being changed. And so the character of Abe shifted a lot as a result of that collaboration between Jake and David. As far as Jake and I think what he would do is he gave me a lot of room to create. He gave me a lot of room, and then every now and then he would jump in and maybe just say like one word or one sentence. You know, it was never like, well, I think she's like this or I think she's like that. It was always, you know, just one thing that he thought might unlock another piece or might add another layer, and then he just totally stepped back. And I appreciated that because, you know, it definitely gave me a clear canvas, right, on which to create. But also these suggestions were wonderful because then I could see through another lens and, like, add another color that I hadn't thought of before. And so with us, it was a very simple way of directing me. And thankfully, both he and I were very pleased with, you know, with the outcome. And I think that also speaks to his writing as well, you know, that the world was fully realized. And and I thought Melba, you know, between what I brought and what he brought, I thought was made for a good collaboration as far as our points of view.
Excellent. And let me ask you, in what ways do you feel that this project has helped you grow as an actress?
Oh my gosh, it's helped me 1,000%. You know, in my own life, I tend to be very optimistic, very bubbly, very victory oriented, and when it comes to things that are difficult to confront or difficult to acknowledge or experience, I tend to shy away from them in my own life, right? I'd much rather be happy, I'd much rather be excited than to really have to confront painful things. And I think most people are that way, right? Most people don't want to sit in pain, right? We want to overcome. And so as an actor, I had to allow myself to go to this place, right? Allow myself to shed my own defense mechanisms, to shed my own protective, you know, emotional measures, and to really allow myself to be naked, naked emotionally, naked spiritually, naked artistically, in order to serve the reality and depth of this story. And so it absolutely stretched me as a person and as an artist, and I'll always be grateful for that.
I want to thank you again for joining us at Teeny Magazine. We definitely enjoyed the movie. Before you go, do you just want to tell us any upcoming projects you have that we can look out for in the future?
Sure, and thank you so much for having me, Keith. It's definitely been a pleasure being on. So starting next week, September 19th, Tuesday night, is the season premiere of If Loving You Was Wrong on OWN. Now you can see Free Indeed on iTunes. It's just released on iTunes for people that are listening and now watch the movie. And so that was just released yesterday. And not too much about, but when they see it, they'll know. So maybe we'll do a part two. What's in and out?
Yeah, it's cutting in and out. But we have it. It's going to be If Loving You Is Wrong on OWN. That's one of Tyler Perry's dramas on the Oprah Network. We'll definitely be keeping an eye out for that. And, guys, if you have not seen the movie yet, Free Indeed, make sure you see that. Thanks again, Edwina.
Thank you so much.
You got it.
Bye-bye.